everyone. This is Bea from the marketing team of WeGrow VA. We're back with another interview with another awesome guest. Over here at WeGrow VA, alongside our pursuit of helping businesses and people grow into their full potential through virtual assistants, we are in pursuit of meaningful conversations that push us and our audience to grow even further in any aspect of their life. And today's conversation will be no different. We are finding the truth in yourself with Kelby McIntosh. Also, if you want to watch or listen to the rest of our conversations, then head on over to our YouTube channel. Just search for WeGrow VA or check out the link in our bio. All right, let's get this show on the road. So let me introduce our awesome guest for today. So our guest for today is a native of a small town called Marshall in Texas. They then moved to Sacramento and have now made a home in Fremont, California. Kelby, also called KB, has had an impressive career in broadcast journalism. He has worked extensively with KETK as a staff writer and as an associate producer for Cumulus Media. Kelby had a dark period of homelessness in his life that has then resulted in the creation of a production company and podcast that holds a bi-coastal listenership, a true feat even through adversity. Let's get to know Kelby more and his passion for journalism that has branched out into a business and what are his next steps. So, hello Kelby, how are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. I've done quite a few things, but I've never had someone just kind of lay out my my kind of evolution or
Your
timeline.
career? Yeah, it's
So
really
I am
different.
yeah, it is. Thank you. But no, I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me on to speak and all that kind of stuff. So I'm excited to answer whatever questions you have for me because normally I'm the one asking questions.
That is very true. So the roles are reversed this time around.
Exactly.
All right, so Kelby, I'm going to start this off light. Since we have parents who listen to our podcast and also watch our videos, I wanted to ask you, how would you explain what journalism is to their fifth grader?
Journalism is essentially capturing just moments of life in word form and putting it on paper for a lot of people to read. That is like the essence of journalism. If I was to get a little bit more detailed, we would use words like captivating stories to tell stuff like that. For me, what I love about it is capturing news, capturing capturing the stories that hit home for us. A lot of human interest and things to that nature. But if I have to just break it down to its simplest form, it's just me writing stories about people telling stories.
I love that. That really is so simple. And we
Yeah.
usually do that question over on a lot of our interviews because, if you can explain it in the most simple way, you can really get to the essence of it. So yeah, I
Yeah.
love that. You're just telling the stories of other people. Okay. I want to know, so as I mentioned in your introduction, you have a really extensive, broadcast journalism experience. But I want to know the journey to that. Like, what drew you to writing and producing content in the first place? And where do you get that inspiration to stay active in this field?
Oh, that's a beautiful question. What really got me into it was is that when I was going to college, for some people, university, for people across the pond, they might say uni. But for me, going to college, I actually didn't start out in broadcast journalism. I actually started out as an art major. I wanted to paint and draw and be this really big artist, right? But when it came time to do a scholarship, essentially all the gallery scholarships for being an art major were kind of full. So I had a friend at the time and a fellow student who worked at our local radio station, and they needed some people to do some graphic design. I talked to my professor and said, just explain the situation. And essentially, I was able to work at the radio station while getting scholarship credit. And so did some work for the radio station, did some graphic design, and then that same friend that offered this opportunity was like, we have news segments that need to be written, and produced for on air. And so I worked with him, a few other producers, wrote some news segments for the station, did some other work for the station, did some hosting. And soon as I did that, it immediately for me switched from, oh, I want to be this artist to, oh, I want to do broadcast journalism. It so from that moment, I immediately, when I got back to university, the scholarship ended. I switched majors completely because I officially found my space. Like the space that I feel happy in, and I see myself doing for a long-term career.
That's really interesting. And just to let you know, I also, well, of course, as we were doing our research in preparation for this interview, I gave your podcast a listen. So it's interesting to also hear that side of the story of
Yeah.
how you kind of got there. And personally, I also just wanted to tell you, I really enjoyed feeding the albatross. Is that
Oh, thank
correct?
you. Thank
Yeah,
you.
because I really love the storytelling format of it. There's
Yeah.
just something that feels kind of homey, and in the same time, I don't know, it hits certain things. I just love the storytelling aspect of how you created
Thank
that
you.
podcast.
Thank you.
And I'm
It's
happy. Oh, sorry, go on.
no, go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to express that I really enjoyed it because it showed, maybe it's also coming from me as a person who also just genuinely and generally also um enjoy storytelling.
Yeah.
And I just think that, it's really cool to see. And now that in this conversation, it's interesting to see, oh, you were an art major. And I'm happy
Yeah.
that you found a love and passion for broadcast journalism and that you're here now. Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Like, and honestly, it wasn't like when it came to the podcast being the albatross,
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't something that clicked like right away.
Mm-hmm.
I've done other podcasts before, some with co-hosts, some by myself. But it was about kind of refining the method to figure out the
Mm-hmm.
niche because I have a lot of inspirations, everything from music to animation, pop culture.
Mm-hmm.
Just just I soak up a lot of. I'm very inspired by a lot of different things, and so I wanted to figure out a way to kind of like meld all these things that represents me as a journalist in my career while still kind of telling these very captivating stories in a way that doesn't feel like hard breaking news, CNN, very hard breaking, but in a way that's very palatable while still highlighting a very social issue and the guests that I have on the podcast.
I hear you on that. And that's a very hard thing to balance
Yeah.
given how, news has a tendency to always kind of, yeah, like heartbreaking, or the past 2 years has also been very difficult in a collective
Yeah.
way,
Yeah.
and I think that as much as it's important to obviously say, be able to report the heartbreaking or like the important factual news, we still need to kind of capture humanity,
Yeah.
capture
Yeah.
that there is still life and there's still joy. And that sometimes, yeah, like as you kind of mentioned, that it's not, what's that word? Sorry, I'm trying to capture that. What I'm saying is that, yeah, things can get rough, but there are
Yeah.
still good things that we should also know about and should also be grateful for.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, staying on the track about the podcast, I
Hmm.
wanted to ask, since you have your own production company now, Pencil Media, correct?
Yes. Yes.
And the podcast, I've listened to Feeding the Albatross and Alone on the Couch. Of course.
You listen to both. First
Yeah,
off, that makes my heart happy that you've listened to both.
of
Um,
course.
yes, yes,
So
yes,
going back, so you have your production company called Pencil Media, and
yes.
I've given your two podcasts a listen: Feeding the Albatross and Alone in the Couch. I am a little
Uh-huh.
more leaning towards Feeding the Albatross because of its storytelling tone and
Yeah,
style.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Um, and you have a background in journalism, so all
Mm,
those things, right? I wanted to
right.
ask you, what do you think are the similarities you see between them, like in terms of the process?
Yeah. The process between like doing a podcast and just like say for instance writing an editorial or something to that nature, it's still the same process of you have to figure out your subject matter, you have to figure out the you have to conceptualize, you have to have a format, just like if I'm writing an editorial, I have a certain format that I want to follow to make sure I'm highlighting all the specific points. The same kind of labor intensity goes into creating a podcast episode. Like I have to figure out, okay, who's my guest? Same as if I was writing like, and that's for both podcasting and writing an editorial, as well as the subject matter, figuring those things out, making a format of how the episode of the podcast is going to flow, as well as the journey that I want to take the reader on as if I was writing an editorial. A lot of the same labor intensive creative outlets are the same for both. Um, they still require a lot of writing, a lot of editing, and I would say the only difference is that I would say between podcasting and writing editorials or doing human interest piece or whatever I'm just writing in general is that podcasting is a little bit more labor intensive on the audio side of things. So editing audio is a little can get a you can really dive down a rabbit hole when editing audio and that kind of stuff. Whereas me writing an article, I kind of already have the notes that I'm looking for. So it's just a matter of putting it down into very light editing here and there. I can do that a lot faster than producing a podcast episode. It's an audio engineer in me at points in times. Like I might hear something in an episode that I've done and it's just like, oh, tweak this, tweak that. I don't like how this goes. But an article, I can just write, do some editing, highlight some points, and get it to the magazine or the website pretty fairly easy and fast versus podcasting to where it's a lot more thought.
All right, I hear you on that. So because of that, like, I mean, yeah, I definitely hear you on that whole creative labor intensive part of
Mm-hmm.
podcasting. But now I wanted to ask, what was the defining moment that made you jump to run your own business? What was the thing that was like, oh, I'm going to make a production company. Oh, I'm going to make a podcast. Because yeah, you're a journalist. You're a broadcast
Yeah,
journalist. You
yeah,
write. And now I know that as I mentioned earlier in your introduction, you have had experience with producing content over on KETK and
yeah.
Communist Media, right? But
Yes.
for you, what was that moment that like, oh, I'm gonna make a production company, I'm gonna make a podcast?
Yeah. So I was actually working out in San Francisco and it was for a company called Cruise. Really dope company that specializes in self-driving cars and all kinds of advanced technology. And I was working on their marketing team, doing some stuff for them, live content creation, that kind of stuff. And the pandemic hit. And when the pandemic hit, we of course went to remote work, and that was a process for a little bit of time. And then essentially, I believe they ended up selling a majority of their company to a bigger fish, a bigger company. And we had to go through these kind of reviews, these these work reviews and all this kind of stuff. And so a lot of people ended up like getting carried over. Some people got laid off, and some people used that opportunity to just find a new job in general. And so for me, it was one of those moments to where it was I was sitting on the fence about, do I want to continue on working or do I want to use this opportunity to start a new kind of venture business? And I just kind of went out a leap of faith. Not, and I will say this though. I will say this. It was
Go ahead.
not of my own volition at first. It took some major convincing from some very keynote people within my circle that helped me be like, you can do this. You could start your own business kind of thing. But yeah, no. That's the pandemic essentially is why gave me that kind of motivation. The pandemic and friends is what helped me be like, start your own business.
It's really interesting. We've had a couple of, interviews and conversations, and obviously the topic of the pandemic is always, somehow gonna come up, and how it has changed everyone, either to strengthen them in where they are now, or like in your case, to take leaps. And, at the end of the day, we're all just trying to survive. Yeah,
Exactly.
essentially.
Exactly.
But in some way, it's also nice because, I mean, the pandemic isn't nice. But what I am saying is that it did push a lot of people to kind of change and find themselves,
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was just something that I've noticed in the conversations I've had over here on WeGrow
Yeah.
VA.
Yeah. It's because it's a very kind of opportunistic moment
Yeah.
with the pandemic because you have a lot of time, especially if you've been working remote.
Mm-hmm.
You're in your kind of bubble to work at your pace and still do your job, but it also allows you to get into different things that
Yeah.
you might not necessarily get into, picking up a new hobby, reading those books that's been kind of sitting on your bookshelf for a while, or getting into new music. It's one of those things that have blossomed a lot of different creative outlets for people. And through those creative outlets have flourished business ideas to do supplemental income or even be full time within a new business venture kind of thing. And for me, it definitely was tapping back into my first love of broadcast journalism and all that kind of stuff. So I'm though the pandemic is very bad, and and we're still having our own battles with the pandemic and all the things that comes with it. For me, I count it as an opportunity because it allowed me to like really look into starting my company.
I definitely hear you on that. Just to share, I did not think I did not think I would be hosting
Mm-hmm.
the pandemic. This is the result. This version of me right now is a result of the pandemic. Um, it's not that I don't know how to talk in front of people, but I
Yeah,
did not think I would be doing it as a job. And
yeah,
but I would say that it has pushed me in a healthy way, you know?
that's that's good.
Yeah.
How do you like hosting this kind of
Mm-hmm.
segment, these segments, and having these kinds of conversations?
What? Sorry.
How do you like hosting these podcast segments
Mm-hmm.
and just kind of the getting a feel for like all the people that you've met
Yeah.
and just kind of the conversations that you've held?
Well, I mean, it's been interesting. I'm definitely a lot more relaxed now
That's
compared
good.
to like my first interview. And I mean, I've had so much help from, and I didn't want to host in the first place as well, just to share that.
Mm,
But my
mm,
team was very adamant that no, you can do this, you can do this. And because they've seen that I do create, like video content as well over here on WeGrow VA, specifically
yeah,
for like our TikTok. And they're like, see, you can do that. So, and it's just talking, and they're like,
yeah,
you can do it. And
yeah,
it was just really nice because I think similar to when to your friends and key people in your life that pushed you to like, no, Kelby, you can do this. It's a similar way with me as well with hosting, with my coworkers saying that no, you can do it. We're gonna guide you and you're gonna get better. And with every interview, and the thing is, I'm not also just doing pre-recorded stuff. Sometimes I'm doing live, which is so much more intense.
yeah,
But the pandemic has pushed me to that, and it's been interesting to kind of also see my evolution as I watch through the older videos and
yeah,
stuff.
yeah,
But it makes you think that okay, I'm growing. We're good. I'm
That's good. That's good.
yeah.
And interviewing only gets better with time.
Yeah.
And like one of the things that's helped me interview people, of course, thorough research
Mm-hmm.
and understanding the proper questions. One of the tips that I always like, especially as an interviewer, is just bringing up that one thing that they don't expect you to kind of ask about. Sometimes, like certain guests might have a thing that they're into, like a favorite movie or a favorite hobby, and by like bringing it up, it has kind of like this disco ball moment. Like you see their face light up, and they're just like, "Oh wow!" Um, we even had that moment where you brought up Alone on the Couch. I was
Yeah.
just expecting to talk about feeding the albatross, but for you to bring up Alone on the Couch, I was like, wow, you've done your research.
Of
I love it.
course. Yeah. Yeah, I was gonna say, didn't we have that moment? But so
Yes,
yes, we did.
yes,
And
yes.
I genuinely did enjoy, but yeah, feeding the albatross. I'm waiting
Thank
for
you.
more.
Thank
So,
you. Thank you.
you
Yeah,
know.
I'm definitely working on some stuff. September, I start working um, with another broadcast company out here called KALW. And so they've been working to help me develop season two and get better guests. And I'm really been kind of saving all my material for that kind of production process. Just because it's a level up from what I've been doing already and to kind of have that scale of continuous growth. That's what you always want to aim for. So for me, it's stuff is on the way. Stuff is definitely
That
on
is
the way.
so exciting to hear right now, Kelby. Thank you for
Thank you.
sharing that. That also, makes me personally happy because I'm like, why are these so short? Why only like what, less than 4, 5 episodes for each? And I was worried,
Yes.
like, where is he?
I'm glad you say that because um you know for me it was definitely about letting it breathe, letting the episodes breathe, letting the interviews breathe, and just I worry about attention span sometimes
Oh,
because
I hear you
like
on
some
that.
people can't like
Mm-hmm.
listen to like even I'm guilty of it. There's podcasts that I love, but I've never completed a full episode of because I just don't have time to dedicate towards listening to 2 hours worth of audio. But for me, it was just like I just wanted to come in, drop a good story, give you some facts, and then just kind of sneak right out the door kind of thing. But with season two, I'm definitely taking in more time to make them a little bit longer and give you more as far as the interviews and the story is concerned. And definitely, it won't be just a 5 episode run. It will be more. I promise.
Thank you. Thank you, Kelby. And I'm very much looking forward to that. And it's not just me who also listen. I've also told the team, oh hey, Kelby does this. You want to listen? I'm unsure, but I'll check in with them if they've listened because yeah.
I appreciate all the listens. I really do. It makes my heart swell to have these kinds of listens and people like yourself and like, oh, this is so good and all. So it's just like, thank you. It validates that I am on the right path.
Oh, thank you, and you're welcome, Kelby. All right. So on a more um going well, still on the podcast. So research says that there are roughly 2 million podcasts that are available and growing right now. I
Yes.
wanted to ask you what makes your podcast stand out and oh, how do you turn a casual listener to an avid follower? What are your thoughts on that?
Um, One of the things that makes my podcast stand out is that we did win an award for the
Oh man.
podcast.
Oh,
Yeah, so
congratulations.
thank you. We won one award for the podcast. Top 10 Black podcast to listen to, as well as a production award as well.
Is this
So,
for Alone on the Couch
oh,
or?
this is feeding the albatross.
Oh, okay, got it.
Yes, yes, this is for feeding the albatross.
I
So
knew I
that's
picked
one
a good one.
standout. Yeah, that's one standout thing that separates the podcast is awards. But overall, I say one thing that makes it stand out is that I really want the listener. Let me rephrase that. I'm sorry. When I went into creating Feeding the Albatross, I really wanted the listener to feel like we're on a journey together. Um, and I think I stated this in the podcast, but I'll reiterate it. It's just I've listened to certain podcasts before, and it feels like the guest and the hosts are on a different kind of pedestal or plateau, and everyone else is just kind of catching up to that knowledge kind of thing. For me, I wanted Feeding the Albatross to feel like we're learning together, me and the listener. I never want to feel like the listener is alienated when talking about certain subjects and doing certain interviews. For me, it's really giving the listener a very big piece of who I am and how I conduct my skills of interviewing and being a journalist and the conversations that I want to have. There is a lot of great news podcasts out there that give you all the facts and all that kind of stuff. Um, but I like to think that my podcast is more storytelling with elements of news than necessarily just a full blown news kind of podcast.
Yeah, I hear you on that. And I also felt that the same way with the things that you've explained with um feeding the albatross. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
hear you on that.
So,
So,
but yeah,
mhm.
that's one of the big things for me, as far as the podcast is concerned, and what makes it stand out the most outside of awards and production credits and all that kind of hoopla kind of stuff. So
Yeah, but I wanted to say again, congratulations for that. That is such a great feat. And, that is an achievement in itself, especially
thank
since
you.
this is a recently created over the pandemic business, you know?
Yes, yes, yes. To have that kind of acknowledgement for a project is really cool just because like I've done this kind of hamster wheel before with like Alone on the Couch and a few other podcasts that I've worked on. But to have this project be really a definitive representation of myself and what I do, but also pencil media and that kind of stuff, like that's really like a big feat. So yeah.
I love that for you. Next question. So Spotify has stepped up the game by offering video podcasting, and with all this growth in the podcasting industry and generally, and you've explained how labor intensive it is
Yeah.
creatively, how do you plan to scale your business, or like what kind of help what kind of help do you have?
Yeah, so as far as help is concerned, one of the major contributors of help is probably Shauna with Opinion PR. She handles a lot of the back end stuff as far as like the connections to guests and making sure everything kind of fits thematically, topic wise, and that kind of stuff. She's my publicist, so she's always the one that's like, think about the brand, think about the brand. That's her kind of
I
like the
hear you.
phrase. Whereas I'm more of the creative, like I just want to talk to people and just do all the other stuff. So that's the kind of help that I have as far as like the production stuff is kind of concerned. But I know for us now, and the big thing is for scaling, video has been a thing that I've been looking into because right now the podcast is only audio format. Video is something that I've been looking into as well as different ways to market the techniques. I know YouTube has started their YouTube shorts as well as there's a few things to do on TikTok. But we've really been looking into those kinds of things when we start wanting to introduce a more video element. It's kind of like thinking about if we do a video element, the setup and how we want it to look, and the visual aspects of it, kind of thing. You want it to look nice, but you don't want it to look too well produced. Like you want to. It's such these weird marketing balances that I'm still trying to navigate and figure out. But overall, adding in a visual element is definitely on our list, as well as some different marketing techniques.
I love that, and I'm looking forward to that for you guys. And just as like kind of like a humble self promo over here on WeGrow VA, if you need help, you can talk to us about it. That's the
I
point.
see what you did there, and I love it. I love
Thank you.
it.
It's so hard to self promo without being too, in your face.
Yeah.
But no, genuinely, this is also why we love having these conversations because it's a lot more intimate and we make a connection with you. And if there is any sort of help that we can do for you, yeah, let's just talk about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Well, it will be off the record past this
Of
interview,
course.
but yeah, definitely for sure. Like I love our conversation, and I've also been doing my research, so don't worry. It's right up
All
here. We
right.
can always
That's
have a
so
conversation.
good to know. Thank you, Kelby.
Hmm.
Right. So, Kelby, I wanted to ask you if you would be
Hmm.
like Steve Jobs, just for example, of the
Yeah.
podcasting industry, what would be the biggest innovation that you can think of that can help both creators and listeners?
Ooh, if there was something that I could like definitely help with the innovation process, it would either be on the editing portion of podcasting, just because I understand how time consuming editing can be. So it'd probably be an app or a program that can help facilitate the editing process for a lot of newcomers to the podcast industry. I feel like that's one of the things that kind of makes people hesitant when kind of jumping into this kind of thing of starting a podcast or just content creation in general. It's just a steep learning curve with certain editing programs. Um, if it's not for the editing portion, the second one I would probably choose would be like the distribution. Just because you can create it, you can edit it, but sometimes the distribution of your episodes, podcast episodes, can be a little bit wonky trying to figure out the right kind of distribution website or program or things of that nature. So if I was turtleneck wearing Steve Jobs, I would choose one
Yeah.
of those two avenues to focus in when it comes to the podcast industry.
Oh, I definitely hear you on that. And now for our last question. So, Kelby, we've talked a lot about you. We've gotten to know you, your podcast, and the process and everything. So, as someone who is a broadcast journalist and is also a business owner and, podcast host yourself, do you have any advice for someone who would want to pursue broadcast journalism and or podcasting? Any
Yeah,
advice?
yeah, most definitely. Um, be open to the process and don't be afraid to experiment. Like like for me, how I started in a very untraditional path, to approach that with the same mindset of how you may start is not always how you'll end. So be open to applying different creative formats, be open to doing things by yourself or introducing a friend, or just being open to the creative aspect of how you want to do a podcast. Don't think that it's always one way, because the way you create might be the way that people love you the most, kind of thing. And so always be open, never be afraid to learn. And if there's one other thing I can say, film and record everything, because everything is content. And, oh, also to don't be afraid to shamelessly promote yourself, because it's something that you create. A lot of people tend to like post it once, and they just kind of like, yeah, I kind of did that, and they kind of like
Yeah.
pass over it. But it's your baby, it's your project. don't be afraid to tell the world about what you're doing and how creative you are, because those kinds of things you should definitely take a lot of pride in, and because it's something you did. And so, yeah, that's the last
Okay. So we've had such a wonderful conversation, Kelby, and just kind of like a quick rundown as much as I can remember of our conversation. So we talked about you, your past, and your journey, and journalism, especially about captivating stories, capturing news, and sharing it to the people, like stories that hit home. It's not always the heartbreaking stuff, sometimes it's the heartwarming stuff, because they're equally just as important, and we should be grateful for that. And we went along to understanding your story. I didn't know you were an art major. That was interesting. And I'm so happy that it led you to becoming a broadcast journalist and you found so much love and passion for this, and that, sometimes things really happen in a collective way. It's the pandemic, it pushed you, and I'm so glad that not just the pandemic pushed you, but also the people around you pushed you to pursuing Pencil Media and all your podcasts. I also wanted to congratulate you once more for the amazing awards that Feeding the Albatross got. This is also a plug that you should listen to Feeding the Albatross. That is also a personal recommendation for coming from me. And we went through understanding, like, I guess, the process of the podcast and the, journalism, and there was just so much from this conversation. It's very hard to remember everything, which is great because don't worry, there will be a replay. This will be out in our channel, specifically over on YouTube, as well as our other conversations over there. And over here on WeGrow VA, don't forget, if you're a business owner that is in need of growing your business to achieve entrepreneurial excellence by hiring a virtual assistant, or you're just curious to know more about what we can offer, then make sure to get in touch with us, WeGrow VA. Head over to our website, wegrowva.com, to schedule a call. So, and don't forget to follow WeGrow VA over on all of our social media to be updated on the latest ins and outs on everything, on anything and everything. Link in bio. And I'm not gonna end with myself. I wanted to ask Kelby to now take the floor and tell us what's going on with you. Promo time.
Oh, no problem. Thank you so much for this amazing conversation. And I hope Alex, the editor, thank you, because as a fellow editor, I understand like how these things go. So I appreciate your effort. Please make sure that you listen to Feeding the Albatross on all streaming platforms, as well as thank you so much for that beautiful promotional plug. I really enjoyed that. As well as you can read all the stories involved with whatever projects we've going on pencilmedia.com. That's PNCLmedia.com. From there, you can read all the stories and all that kind of stuff of what we got going on. Right now, our current project is the Stop the Hate Initiative. We've partnered with some local people, a lot of local journalists in the California community, as well as some other organizations that are talking about stopping the hate and hate related crimes, and improving education for Black and Brown communities here in California. So that's a big thing that we're definitely working on. And other than that, it's pure journalism. If you want to follow me, you can at underscore KB McIntosh. That's all my social medias. So you type in underscore KB McIntosh, you can find me there. And you can just follow Pencil Media, PNCL Media, as well as on all social platforms. But no, thank you so much for having me on. You've been a wonderful host, and anytime
You.
just want to ask me more questions, I will be here to receive those questions and give you the answers.
Oh,
So yeah.
thank you so much, Kelby. I very much appreciate that. And to our listeners, or to anyone watching, don't worry. All of the social media, um, like where to find us and where to find KB, will be in the description box. We will be tagging each other so you can find us and each other. So again, thank you again from
Somewhere like links, because it's going to be on
yeah,
YouTube. I
somewhere
like
here.
it
Editor,
should.
Alex, wherever you are. Thank you. So thank you once again, Kelby. And to anyone who's listened this much, we are very grateful, and we'll see you guys in the next one.